Welcome to the Sports Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Luer, and I'm delighted to go across the pond again, catching up with my buddy Hrish Lotlikar in San Francisco this morning. Well, my morning, his afternoon, evening there. Welcome to the podcast, Hrish.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be here. Really enjoy our conversation. So love to be on with your audience. And, it's a pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion. And I want to sort of frame this a little bit because anyone will check out your backgrounds going, this gentleman has nothing to do with the world of sports. And this is the Sports Entrepreneurs Podcast. Well, and this is the important part. What we'll be talking about is extremely relevant to the world of sports, entertainment, music, or arts in general, because we're going to be talking about the world of NFTs, blockchain technology, which is coming in there. And that's sort of really where we're going to spend a good time at the end or the later part of the podcast, because that's the world you live in. And this is, as I said, that's why it is so relevant, and that's why I have you here. But before we always do this, of course, we go into a little bit of the background. And your background is as colorful as anyone I've ever seen and probably anyone I've ever had on the podcast. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun there as well. And we're going to sort of dive straight into it. So let me sort of, just introduce you in a more very general sense. So I would sort of describe you as a banker turned VC turned tech, crypto, and blockchain entrepreneur. And on top of it, you are clearly a digital nomad traveling around the world. I've spent time around the world in Eastern Europe and other places, setting up businesses there. So we're going to touch on a few of those things and just hear your incredible story. So let's get in here, Hrish. Let's start a little bit here with U.S. Navy and working as a surgical technician during university and all this sort of crazy stuff you did already before you ever even got into the business world. Just give us a quick short story on that one.
Yeah. So, I went to Rice University undergrad, but in high school, before college, there was a program in my high school, which was an Army related program. And it's funny, I wanted to, basically get some experience because we had a rifle range at our school, and I was like, oh, how do I get involved in that? There was like this military thing, and long story short, it was just kind of cool. I had not been around any of that stuff, and it was like this was like the early 90s. It was like Desert Storm was going on. I was like a teenage boy. I was like, wow, there's like a military little command post in my high school, and what's this about? And so, long story short, I got involved in that for a couple of years, just because it was interesting, and never planned on going into the military. And got a great experience, learned a lot. But my senior year, the colonel, who was, at my school, he was an Army colonel, came to me and said, "Hey, Hrish, have you thought about the military after high school?" And I'd only planned on going to, college. That was kind of the plan after, high school for me. Right. And, he said, you'd do us a favor if you applied to the military academies and the military scholarships, because we think that you would probably get in with your grades. I'd done pretty well in high school. And, you'd kind of give us recognition at our program if you got in, Right. And I really had a lot of respect for him. And so I said, sure. Yeah. That sounds like a fair thing. I really did enjoy this program, and, I appreciate it. And so I applied, and I ended up getting in to all of the programs that the U.S. military has, and the Army and the Navy. Right. And then, right before college, I thought, what, might as well do it. And I ended up doing the Navy. I received the Admiral Nimitz Scholarship, and basically did that for a bit, learned a ton. But I was planning on going to medical school, and how it ends up working out in the military is when you have an aspiration at the end of, kind of your training, they ask you what your first choice is and your second choice. And, it turns out that I wouldn't have been able to kind of be able to direct my career, especially if I want to go into medicine. And so I decided, that I would just kind of go back to being a civilian. But it was an awesome experience. I learned a ton, and a lot of my friends are Navy SEALs now, and operating submarines and surface warfare, and I learned surface warfare, aviation, Marine Corps, and the submarine force. So learned a lot, and it was great.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like an incredible start to your whatever, not even your career in that sense, but I love this. Now,
a lot of leadership.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine the learning is insane, and as if we had a bit more time, we would dig a little deeper in there. So, but we have so much to cover here because you've done so many more things that I want to pace us nicely here to the next level. Because somewhat, if I look at it, sort of you coming then out of college, and I think you studied at Baylor's. You ended up in I would call it, with Aon, which is an insurance company, and then you spent, obviously quite a bit of time in the early days there in the banking world. Why, you wanted to be you said earlier you wanted you be a doctor. How did you end up in the insurance and banking world?
Yeah, so I went to grad school and I was pursuing an MD, MPH, MBA. So, I was doing a MPH, MBA first, and the idea was to do the triple degree. I'd gotten a grant.
Triple
to do the
degree.
MBA.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that even.
Yeah.
I heard double, but I've heard triple.
Yeah, I'm Indian, so education's like one of the things like my mom and anyone I grew up with really kind of respects, and so I didn't really. It was for me. It was just like, oh, okay, and I'd gotten a grant to do the MBA, so I was like, oh, might as well add an MBA. I was originally planning on doing MD, MPH, and then I added the MBA. And instead of working in a hospital, so my college job was I used to take out eyes for transplant surgery. So surgically remove eyes. That was my college job. Right. Yeah. But since I was getting the MBA, I thought I'd work in consulting. And I started off in consulting for a summer, loved it, and took this path, a little bit less traveled for what I thought I was going to do and kind of my family and stuff like that. And ended up, doing consulting and then moving into investment banking in New York. I started off with that healthcare background, ended up in public finance, and then moved into corporate finance and M&A and healthcare investment banking M&A.
All right, got it. Okay. That's the link. Okay, that makes some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I read on your CV here. It's called the Wall Street's program. What was that all about?
Yeah. So, I did investment banking. I was at UBS and HSBC. Investment banking is a pretty hard profession to get into, especially at the larger banks. They have a very competitive process to get a job there. It's partly because they just, pay you pretty well, and it's very competitive to get one of those jobs. They don't hire that many people in the specific department that I was talking about, which is M&A and corporate finance, department. Right. And I kind of figured out, how to do that. How do you interview? How do you kind of learn the requisite, skill sets to pass the interviews, and how do you even kind of approach getting into an investment bank if you, weren't kind of doing that all along, which a lot of people, they come out of high school wanting to be an investment banker on Wall Street, right? So how do you kind of ace them out of it, and how do you win and get a job in those banks? Right. And so after doing that for a while, when I went over to HSBC at the time, was building up their bank. They didn't buy a bank like all the others did. They were building up, person by person. And so part of my job, besides doing my investment banking role, was to recruit and hire, new grads. And so I learned a lot about, that part of the process. And so one day I thought, I was very entrepreneurial, and I realized, I didn't want to spend all my time, working for the bank. I'd love to spend all, if I was smart enough for the bank to hire me, I should be smart enough to start something of my own, was my philosophy.
I like that.
And, and so I quit, and I thought I had to start something. And the only thing I could think to start was a training program teaching people how to work on Wall Street, because I had done the same thing. I knew how to work on Wall Street. I knew how to get the job. And so I started Wall Street program. That was my first business idea.
Love it. Yeah, just to give also, I like always give some time frame here. We're now in sort of 2005 to 2007 here, right? So it's sort of past the internet bubble. You're hanging around Wall Street, and again, I would argue very shortly after, you're now getting into the VC world, right? With Spencer Task Ventures, I believe is the name of the company. So how do you go from what you were doing there and first gig in VC?
Yeah. So, I'd done investment banking. I quit and I started this company, Wall Street Program, training, students that were interested in getting to work on Wall Street. And I was in the gym, actually, in my building. There's a guy in the building who's, a pretty successful guy. I'd work out with him. And he asked me the same question, what is it that you want to do next? I was like, well, I like this entrepreneurial thing. This is fun. And I used to do investment banking. And he was like, have you thought about venture capital? And I thought, wow, that would be cool. But no, I'd love to get a job in that, but I don't know anyone. And, I don't know how to approach it. And he had a friend, his name's Adam Stern, who's now one of my best friends. Adam was a VC in New York. He introduced me to Adam, and Adam hired me on the spot. So it was great. Right. Yeah. So literally went in for an interview, and next Monday I was working for Adam, learned a ton from him. And one of my best friends.
And again, there, I guess that's where again, healthcare and tech all sort of started to come together for you a bit, right? So let me just talk a bit about what you were doing there. What sort of deals you were doing at that time, and what businesses were you looking at?
Yeah, so Adam, and he still does, by the way, he's a pretty well-known VC in New York, but he does a lot of biotech and tech deals. So a mix of both. He does a lot of biotech, which the healthcare background that I had, was really helpful there. But he does a lot of tech too. So we did, tech companies, consumer internet, all kinds of stuff. And the company I was at, Spencer Trask Ventures, Spencer Trask is the guy who invested in Thomas Edison. So it's a very long legacy to that company. It turned into GE, and they've done a lot of things. There's a guy who runs that company now who's kind of related to the original investor. And so we worked on world-changing ideas. So that was the focus. It was like anything that is gonna change the world. And Adam specifically looked at a lot of biotech and tech. And for myself, I realized, out of those two, I didn't have a medical degree, so biotech for me wasn't as interesting. And I was just more really interested in consumer tech. It was like, what I enjoyed is just as I had this thought, like, if I could do anything, what would I do? And, what I ended up realizing I would do is probably, be just like playing around on some tech, platform or some consumer platform. If I'm on the beach, just hanging out, what am I going to do? Like look at something on my phone or my computer that's kind of interesting and fun. To spend time and, learn or whatever it happens to be. And it's like a tech platform, Right. And I thought that I don't need any training to do that. That's just like really innate. Like I know what I like, and I can just kind of eat my own dog food as I think about those things. And so that's what kind of drew me to doing more tech and less biotech.
Got it. Now, again, let's see, how do we get from there into Eastern Europe? Because obviously, you're going to sounds like a great job, having fun there in New York, in the VC world, and now you're all of a sudden, and again, there was sort of a year or two, which I can't even quite work out what you were doing on the CV here. You in Eastern Europe, you in Ukraine, setting up VCs there. How did that all happen?
Yeah. So, 2009, it was, a slow time in the U.S. economy and Western Europe due to the housing crisis.
Crash,
yeah, after the crash. And, I'd spent time living in Europe, in Madrid, Paris, and London, and gone out to Eastern Europe before grad school. So back in 1999, I'd gone and spent some time living in Europe, and in Eastern Europe, I was in, Prague and spent a little time in northern Czech Republic. And so I'd always had this kind of international bug. It's funny, I'm doing Superworld now, but I've always had this like strong, interest in being very global. Right. And I was sitting in New York, and I thought, what, wouldn't it be cool? Because, Europe and North America, US weren't as they were more stagnated compared to the emerging markets. If you looked at the growth in India or, Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe or South America compared to the US, was still pretty good. They weren't as affected by the housing crisis. Right. And, I thought, that could be an interesting proposition. So I had an idea. Wouldn't it be cool to start a venture capital fund somewhere in the emerging markets? I've learned a lot from Adam. Learned how to raise capital, learned how to structure deals. I'd taken a couple of companies public. And so I was like, I could do this.
You're ready.
So I got on a plane, didn't know anyone. I went to Ukraine, Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Moldova. It took me about a year and a half. That's where the year and a half comes in.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I started a VC fund backed by Viktor Pinchuk in Ukraine.
Amazing. So
yeah.
So again, that's the person who's backing you, you knew or you came across. He said, "Okay, Hrish, I think I like you. You're a smart guy. Let's go, invest in some I guess companies in that part of the world." Just give us one story of that. How do we, how can we visualize that?
Yeah, so that's actually funny. So I went there. I didn't know anyone. I didn't speak Russian. And I got there and I went down to Crimea. I lived in Crimea for a while, then moved to Kyiv. I did get a win after my first month there. So I met my wife, who I'm married to, and have 2 kids now.
Yes.
So that was a very positive, event that happened. Yeah, good start. Obviously, we didn't get married right away, but we met then, and we ended up, living in Ukraine together for 4 years, and then getting married in Asia a few years later in Vietnam when we lived there. But long story short, I didn't know anyone, and so I had an idea. What if I start an event company? And one, because it's fun, but 2, because maybe it's a great way to know people. Mm-hmm. And I started this really cool event company in Ukraine. And, centered around expats and just like places in Kyiv that were owned by, locals that were really nice, that great places that wanted to market themselves. And it turned out to, like, the first event ended up having, 250 people attend. It became this huge hit. Wow. The top magazine in the city, partnered with us. And about 6 months or maybe a year in, I met a guy at the event who knew me from New York, and I didn't even know he knew me from New York. He was like, "Hrish, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? This is my event." And he was like, "I know you from New York." And I was like, "Oh." And he was like, "I came to your party in New York. I'm pretty social, so I used to throw these big parties in New York." Right. And I was like, "Oh, you're from New York? I thought you were from this event." And he was like, "Yeah, I was at this event too." And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I want to start a VC fund." And he was like, "Well, do you know Viktor Pinchuk?" And I was like, "No, I don't know him." And so he ended up introducing me to Viktor's, entity and the team there. And Viktor's a very big LP. So he's the guy who backed Yuri Milner, a DST. DST put in like $500 million into Facebook, and he's a big LP of other pretty big funds. And so,
right. So
met
this
with
is
him.
East Labs, or are we talking about it at the moment? East Labs. All right. Okay.
East Labs. Yeah, that's how we started East Labs. I partnered up with 2 other partners, Evelyn Bushatsky and Olga Belkova, and we started East Labs and ended up investing in about 35 companies out there.
Wow. And just give me an idea. What money are we talking about? Hundreds of millions, tens of millions? Or what's the sort of size of the stuff you guys are doing there?
Yeah, so it's an early stage accelerator, and the point of it was to facilitate the start of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Ukraine. In Ukraine, they have a ton of developers, and usually all the developers in outsourcing, right? And so the pitch was, if you could get these guys together, help them, do seed stage funding into their companies, help them come up with ideas, you could start world-changing companies. So one of our first companies, Preply, just did a Series B round. They're the largest online tutoring marketplace. So that was one of our companies. They just did that deal last week. Promo Republic is another one. But that was kind of the nature of it. It was early stage seed deals.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, again, anyone who knows a little bit about that part of the world, Ukraine and these areas are obviously extremely well known for some really smart tech groups, right? I mean, I guess that's where you realize that as well, right? Where you're on the ground, just incredible, programmers and others are coming out there. So, very interesting. Now, I know you also did some work with Andreessen Horowitz, right? I mean, again, a big name there. You were doing, now was that during the similar time, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I did East Labs, and then also got involved in Tech Minsk. So I met a couple of entrepreneurs in Belarus, and I'm on the board of Tech Minsk, which is a similar kind of entity to East Labs, early stage venture capital. It's backed by the U.S. State Department. And then about 2013, I had the vision of, wouldn't it be cool to live around the world? It was more of an idea, kind of like, wouldn't it be cool to be globally nomadic?
Right.
And my girlfriend at the time and I were living in Ukraine. I'd, done this VC fund. And so I'd gone on a quick business trip to Asia. And came back from that trip. I'd traveled to about 15 countries. Wow. Ended up realizing that Vietnam was the place that I wanted to go next. Right. She's really open. So we ended up moving to Saigon. And in about a month in, I ran into, or on the phone, reconnected with an entrepreneur who had started a company called TopTal. TopTal is an Andreessen Horowitz-backed talent marketplace. Right. Now it's the biggest marketplace in the world. At that time, it was just starting. I was one of the first employees there, the first biz dev employee, and helped to grow and scale TopTal. And TopTal is backed again by Andreessen and a number of other people who are pretty well known, and helped grow and scale that.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So we're slowly making our way up here to get to Superworlds, obviously, very soon here. But again, there's several other initiatives still, which I just want to touch on for a little bit. And one is called the Rogue Initiative Studios. Talk a bit about that. What was that all about? And where were you at that time, actually, when you started that? Were you in Vietnam still, or where is that?
Yeah, so I ended up traveling all over the world with TopTal, because TopTal is totally distributed. So, it was one of the first companies that has been around. Now we take for granted work from home, living distributed, remote lifestyle. Yep. But back then, people had no idea, like, wait, how do you work at home? How do you work distributed? Yes. And TopTal is one of the pioneers in that space, because that's how their workforce is. It's totally distributed. So we started living in Vietnam. We lived in Russia for a while, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, Colombia, Mexico.
You're living my dream, buddy. I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's, we still live it that way. And, that's kind of how that started, is just kind of living everywhere. But I ended up getting recruited by a guy to join a company on the YouTube platform. Joined that company, and at that company is where I met my co-founders for Rogue Initiative and Superworld. Right. So, I was the guy at that company that was kind of helping to bring in capital. Having done East Labs and been in VC and living all over the world, I'd gotten to know kind of a number of investors globally, and pretty well. When you live locally and you're kind of native in a place, you really get to know people. And so, long story short, one of my colleagues ended up leaving, starting a VR company. We'd connected after he left, and we had an idea. Wouldn't it be cool to start a company focused on Hollywood entertainment across film, television, VR, AR, and gaming? Okay. And that idea was born and became the Rogue Initiative. He had previously produced Call of Duty, Modern Warfare series, and Ghosts, and had worked at Amblin and DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg. And so Michael Bay joined us as a production partner at Rogue Initiative. And, again, the big kind of vision of Rogue Initiative is to create new original content and then take that content across all of those mediums. So create a feature film, a television show, a game, VR, AR, all the way to amusement park rides and toys. And that's what we do at Rogue Initiative. So that's how that happened and how that started.
That's very cool. Yeah, and obviously, I think that company, obviously, you're still involved, right? That's still running, and,
yes.
And you guys are creating new cool things there. I love the name, by the way. I think it's cool. Give me one real actual project maybe you're on working either with the studios or with a I guess video developers, or what is it sort of you guys are doing there at the moment?
Yeah, so we're working on a project with Michael Bay. So it hasn't been fully announced yet, but parts of it has been announced. And so again, the model is, a feature film, television show, game, VR, AR, the whole thing. So yeah, it'll be a big franchise.
Cool.
There have been some information out there in the press about it. So that again, studios will kind of announce that. We've also done some VR stuff. We did this thing called Agent Emerson, which is kind of a VR short, 360 VR. We did Crow, the Drowned Armory, which is a VR experience. So
Cool.
we've done a variety of things on the VR AR side as well that we've released.
That is very cool. And I guess, so again, that's in LA. So it gets you a little bit back to the US here. And obviously, I know you are, I remember when we first caught up, I think you were in Texas, and then you were heading out there, I guess, to San Francisco now, Silicon Valley neighborhood. And so we're now nicely, and again, we can still talk about several other things. And I just want to mention someone because I think you're an advisor to Singularity Net, which is, of course, a AI decentralized marketplace. I think you're an advisor to Future Fronts, which again does all sort of visionary stuff. I mean, you're all over the place, or at least involved in so many unique things. So that what you then came up with, which is Superworlds, we're going to talk about in a minute here, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, have we missed anything so far, which we should highlight of? You're just showing your incredible background and the amazing things you're involved in, or is it time to talk about Superworld?
No, thanks so much for covering that. And, I think I've always been interested in travel and cultures and, people. And I've always been a curious person. And so, Superworld really kind of brings all of these different areas of my experience in life and interests together in a very nice way. So, I'm very happy and excited about sharing the story of Superworld with you guys.
Yeah, look, let's dive in there. So again, it's a virtual world, right? Augmented reality mapped into the real world.
Yep.
That's how I would describe it. But let's hear it from you directly. Really give us a good sense. What is Superworld? How does it function? Again, you've been on it obviously for a couple of years, and just recently, I think you shared with me you brought in a new big investor, which is exciting. So talk about all this stuff.
Yeah. So, the story of Superworld really originated about 4 years ago. Pokemon Go came out and became this huge, world sensation, as many people know. A lot of people don't know, but it was the fastest company in history to hit $1 billion in revenue.
Right.
And, it also, this year was one of their best years ever. So I think they, just heard that they had about $2 billion of revenue this year in COVID times. Right. And
that's
so
amazing. Actually, I thought they completely disappeared because I remember that when it was so crazy, all my kids were doing it and then it just sort of disappeared. But I guess it is still around, right? And then still growing, which is great.
Big time. Yeah, I think the revenue is bigger than Fortnite, right? And you hear a lot about Fortnite. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And we thought to ourselves, what, if we can't build the next Pokemon Go, what if we could build a world? What if we could build a place where the next 1,000 Pokemon Goes gets built onto it, right? And that was the high level vision of Superworld. And I'm using the Pokemon Go as an analogy for adding digital information to the real world. And I partnered with my co-founder, Max Woon. Max has done a few different companies. So he did Xfire and sold it to Viacom. But he's done Fizzle, Sliver, Skit, and Toonstar, all venture-backed companies. And Sliver and Toonstar are both in the immersive space. And then he previously worked with Stephen Hawking at Cambridge in his department. So super smart guy. And we got together. Yeah, he is. And we got together and we were like, you know what? Let's build a world. Right. That was the big vision. And so what is Superworld? We're in Superworld right now, Marcus. It's all around us in the real world. So if I come to, Bangkok or New York or London or Paris or anywhere, you could say, hey, Hrish, just check out my world. And I could walk around and you've left me things. You've left a hologram of yourself somewhere fully interactive. I can talk to you. You've left photos and videos in different places. You've left messages at your favorite restaurants about what I should eat and drink. You've basically personalized the real world in augmented reality. I have a world. You have a world. Manchester United can have a world. They could have a football player. somewhere. You could have, balls in one place, or, Nike in the same exact place could have a Nike shoe, because any spot in space could have an infinite number of items, because all of these worlds are just filters on top of the real world, right? Yeah. There could be an unlimited number of filters. And so Superworld is a combination of Pokemon Go, which is and again, analogy for adding digital information to the real world, meets Foursquare, which is the data analogy. On the data side, I want to make it clear, Superworld is all about enhancing your real life. There was a documentary called Social Dilemma that came out, which was all about people getting programmed and, getting into these algorithmic bubbles where they get sucked into like looking at their phone all day, or, getting away from like real world interactions. Right. And Superworld does not want to do that. Superworld's all about, creating and empowering people to live their real life. And that's what we're doing. So on the data side, it's really important. And then finally, we've divided the surface of the Earth into 64 billion blocks. And this is the monopoly aspect of what we're doing. And so you can actually buy Superworld. You're selling the whole world. And if you buy a block, you get a share of any of the commerce, advertising, transactions, e-commerce, digital commerce, data, analytics, and gaming. And so there's a whole ecosystem on top of this, right, with a mobile app and an NFT salon. And we're going to get into the sports stuff, but there's, a lot of stuff that can happen on top. And part of buying the real estate is you get a share of any of that happens and any of the filters that happen on your property.
Right. And these, what was it, 60 billion blocks, they're on blockchain, right? That's part of the trick here, right? Right.
That's right.
So it's all, and so it's blockchain. Now, is each block already, and the word probably didn't exist, NFT, when you started, right? I don't know what it was called at that time. It's just a token, I guess. So that was always part of your, your plan anyway, right? You can buy these parcels or these blocks, and it's on blockchain, right? And therefore it is it's a unique item, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We were one of the first NFT companies that launched, right? So we launched, in the summer of 2018. So, pretty early to that game. We've been around for, in NFTs for at least almost 3 years already. So, it's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Again, I mean, I think the word NFT is just sort of, I would say in the last 3-4 months, that's where it popped up on my radar at least. And but it's been around, since 2017, I think. What's the company called? Alchemy Technologies, right? They were one of the earlier ones in there, right? And CryptoPunks was obviously part of it. So this is all sort of your world, I guess, happening again several years ago already, which I think for most people they had no idea unless you follow this particular space. Now, again, let's bring it a little back to my world here of sports and entertainment, etc. Now you have, of course, these virtual stadiums, right? The Yankee Stadium, the Man United Stadium, the whatever you call it, the O2 arenas are all part of your virtual world. How does it work? I can buy this now. How does it? Are there again? There are issues about IP ownerships and things like that. Just talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So how it works is, we've geographically mapped Superworld on top of the real world into blocks that are about 100 meters by 100 meters square. And so, you could buy, overlays of any real world space. So, a lot of people do buy stadiums, and, they're fans of the sports team that's playing in the stadium, or maybe they're fans of the opposing team. But they buy the stadium because they understand that there's going to be a lot of fans in that location. And, a stadium just generally has a lot of, potential user activity, from anyone in that area. And so, ultimately the reason you want to buy places is because not only is it because it's an NFT that you can buy and sell, and there's a lot of different properties of, why someone would value an NFT besides just, hey, this is the stadium. It could just be for that reason. Right. But also in Superworld, you get a share of any of the user activity that happens there. And so a lot of users understand that a stadium has a lot of activity. And so that's the reason to buy those places.
Right. And so again, talk us through a little bit, just the basics of how do you buy it, right? You buy it with fiat currency. You need crypto already to purchase it. How easy is that process to purchase something?
It's really funny. I have a friend. He's actually the creator of Ethernet. His name's Bob Metcalf. Very famous guy. He created Metcalf's law.
Right.
So he had a call with me today. He was like, "Hey, I need to buy some land on Superworld for my properties. Can you walk me through this?" Right. So
Right.
the point is it can be easier than it is now. So hopefully we're going to make it easier and easier as time goes by. We're kind of in like the dial-up stage of the internet, especially on Ethereum, just because you have to know what a MetaMask wallet is. It's a Web3 wallet, which you can download and install right on your Chrome browser.
Right.
So, it takes a few clicks. You got to download that wallet. You got to put Ether on your wallet. And then once you have Ether and you have your wallet connected, then you're ready to go. Then you just, look on the map, find places that you like to buy, you click on the map, and then you can buy them and you can reprice them to sell them immediately.
Right. Okay. And if I remember, one of our conversations we had before, part of it is, of course, is there is some forms besides, maybe the parcel, I guess the value goes up being an NFT. But you also said there will be commercialization opportunities, right? You could, if you own a building, you can put billboards up there or other sort of things, right? I mean, there is a whole bunch of other elements to that. Maybe give us a couple of those examples.
Yeah. So, the main reason that a lot of people buy properties is they want to, either participate or help create activity on their land. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a number of things that are coming that are going to allow you to, one, create monetization as well as create, content anywhere. And so what's coming is we have an NFT marketplace that's launching very soon that will allow anyone, any person, any user, any influencer, any sports influencer, any, digital artist, that you name it, to take any file that they have and create an NFT in our marketplace.
Right.
And then market that NFT to their fans, or, if it's a sports club, to, all of their followers and fans, et cetera, and be able to create a digital asset that can be bought and sold. And then, ultimately we have a mobile app, as I mentioned, that's in open beta right now. I think in a couple of months it should be ready to fully launch. But that mobile app is going to be this like magic app in your pocket, which allows you to, again, if you're sitting in Bangkok, and you're in the park, I can go boop, and I can say, hey, turn around. And, now there's a big soccer ball, football behind you, in augmented reality. And vice versa. You could put something in that park and I could click on it in Los Angeles or San Francisco or wherever I am and see it appear in front of me in augmented reality. And so the idea is that, you can not only create, discover, and monetize content anywhere, but a lot of that content could be programmable content like NFTs, and you can put that NFT content in locations, and you can even force people to go to certain locations. Back to, the Pokemon Go example, you can say, hey, go to the park and go and activate this thing. And besides that, there's a lot of, and I can talk about our investors, Tim Draper, through Draper Going Home, just invested in the company. And, he has a very strong interest because of his portfolio. And so do we, by the way, in O2O opportunities. So online to offline. Right. And so, all of those things that you can do in the virtual world, that can be, buying a ticket in the real world to the stadium, or buying a ticket to a certain fan experience, or, even esports or whatever it is.
So a bunch of questions popping in my head here just listening to you. One is, have you already had conversations with the owners of these venues, right? It has, Man United or anyone, or the Yankees come to you and saying, hey, Hrish, we want to make sure that we own our piece of the property in the real world on your digital world. And then let's start figuring out how to create events, how to, connect with our fans, and of course, taking whatever they do in the real world into the digital world. Have you had any of that yet, or that's sort of what hopefully we'll be helping you with to get started?
Yeah, I think we'd love your help in doing that. And, we really want to go with, someone like yourself who kind of understands that market really well, and, can help us kind of optimize access and opportunities there. I think conventionally, as we look at the real estate market and the physical world, and we look at what we're doing in the virtual world and Superworld, there are a lot of links to it. I think the virtual world offers a lot of opportunities for developers even, right? So, like you think of any specific property, maybe that property is being, it's on property that's owned by someone else, right? And so it doesn't have to necessarily be that the stadium buys the property in Superworld. There is a concept of just, real estate development. So we've had some conversations with some pretty big developers who've come to us, who own lots of property in general, just all kinds of property in the real world, because they're interested in buying, virtual land. And that's been happening quite a bit. So, as I said, I had a call today with Bob Metcalf, who's a pretty well-known guy who wants to buy, his properties in the physical world in Superworld, right? And so, again, that's happening all the time, and that's happening naturally. So they're just going and buying it as they find this out that this exists.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, again, fascinating stuff. Now, I want to get into the NFT side of it, right? And you mentioned you're on top of or connected to Superworld, which I guess also for everyone who wants to check it out, right? It's superworldapp.com, right? APP.
That's right.
That's the domain name to get and check out Superworlds. Now, so you're building the NFT marketplace connected to it, and so let's really dig a bit deeper into the NFT world, which you've been in there for a couple of years. As I said, for anyone in our industry, if they haven't heard of NBA Hot Shots or Sorare, which is the football world, sort of it's a fantasy NFT, then you must be asleep basically. But so let's be nice here and explain really a bit. First of all, what on earth is NFT, right? Let's start with the basics and then we'll get more technical.
Yeah. So, most people, when they think of crypto, they think of, Bitcoin, and some people might even know Ethereum, or they know about a lot of altcoins out there, right? Like Dogecoin or other coins. And these coins are shit coins. Yeah. And, a lot of these coins are fungible tokens, right? And basically what that means is that if you have one of them and I have one of them, and you sell yours and I sell yours, we're probably going to get the same amount of money because the value of those coins is floating on a market price, right? We can both see what the price of Bitcoin is, and if you have one Bitcoin and I have one, I'm going to get the same amount of money that you are if we sell at the same time. Yeah. Now, the difference between a fungible token, which is what is Bitcoin, and a non-fungible token is if you have one and I have one, they're different. What you have is very unique and what I have is very unique. So if we think of the Superworld example, if you own, Manchester United Stadium, right? And I own, some field in the countryside somewhere or some part of the desert, that maybe the stadium is worth more to someone, especially a fan of Manchester United, than the piece of desert that I own. Right. But the piece of desert I might own is the place where Burning Man happens. Do you get what I mean? And there might be someone who would want to pay much, much more for that piece of desert where Burning Man is. So what's interesting about a non-fungible token is the value of the non-fungible token is really predicated on a million different factors, especially who the buyer and seller are. And so if you think of like a baseball card or some kind of sports card as an example, or a piece of art in the physical world, yes, those are examples of non-fungibility, because each actual item, is unique in many ways. Even a baseball card is like numbered, or, has a year and a team and a player and, a certain quality to it or a certain condition it's in. And all those factors contribute to the price. And that's what the essence of a non-fungible token is. Besides, this is a digital way of doing that, where it's transferable and it's programmable. And more importantly, which means that if you sell it, you can program it to pay off, in certain ways and have some revenue streams and to keep paying you every time it gets resold. So there's a lot of different, features that a non-fungible token has. You can get one that allows you to have features in the offline world too. If you buy this NFT, it allows you to do something at the stadium, with your regular ticket, so lots of things like that.
Yeah, again, I mean, my head is already spinning, just thinking of a million ideas of how you bring these pieces together, and that's obviously where we're going with our discussion here. But I also just wanted to throw a couple of numbers out again for anyone who isn't as deep into the space to get a sense how big this already is. So the NBA Hot Shots, it's only been around, I would say, whatever it is now, several months or so, already generated over $200 million of basically new revenue. I think CryptoPunks, which was one of the earlier ones out there, has done about $130 million worth, with I think the most expensive one selling for $7.5 million, which is again is a small digital artwork, right? And then again, this was sort of CNN news, so more people might have read about it. Is the digital artist, I don't know if you pronounce him, is it Pebbles or Peebles or whatever, who sold his artwork for $69 million fairly recently, right? So again, these are big numbers, right? This isn't just, a $10 little baseball card here anymore. Even though what the NBA Hot Shot does exactly, it is very much following that, I guess the baseball card model, right? You buy little packs of cards, you have to get in line. I've tried to buy one. It is impossible. You have 300,000 other people in front of you waiting to buy one of these packs, and then you open them up like you would open up a traditional pack, and then you see what's in it. The difference is these are video images, right? It's not just a still image or a digital still image. It's an actual video clip, whatever it is, 10 seconds of a player doing something amazing, right? A slam dunk or an amazing pass or something like this. So now here's where it gets really interesting, where, I'm fascinated by, because the content, two things. One is the content is out there already, right? It's now just on blockchain, which means you can track it and therefore you can itemize it. That's one. On the other hand, it is archive material, basically the stuff which normally in the world of sports marketing or sports means very little, right? The value of live content to archive, I would argue, is about 99% drop very shortly after the live event is over, right? And so now someone is coming up with these ways where you creating monetization of content which was never there before. And that's really, I think, where your NFT marketplace is heading, right? Where you guys are now creating an opportunity for someone to bring content or to create any form of IP and turn it into NFTs, and on the back of it creating new value, right? Is that the big picture, or how would you frame this?
Yeah, I think that the opportunity is just that, is the ability to to create monetization opportunities from the ability to create assets out of content, out of experiences, out of, in our case, virtual land, right? I mean, literally almost anything can be digitized and created into an asset. And in the sports world, I think that, what's very interesting is you have a lot of these, quote unquote, moments or experiences that people really, relish, yep. Whether it's, something that they've seen in a live game that they remember as some memorable, situation or experience or shot or, inning in a game or whatever sport you're talking about. Or a player doing something, and there's so many different interactions, and the beauty of an NFT is you can monetize and memorialize all of them and make them tradable.
But yeah, and again, I since I've gotten into this space here and learning and studying, I mean, it is happening, right? So I read about Ubisoft, which is obviously a game developer, partnering with the Belgium Football League to create I guess it's an NFT blockchain fantasy program. So there are different forms of it, right? We got our buddy from Socios here who has team tokens where you acquire something. So I mean, not every NFT is the same as well, right? There's a lot of differences. So I think we want to capture that a bit as well. Now, again, what you're looking to do at the moment is, I think you're also working with artists, right? Who create digital art, and you're looking at music. Give us maybe one specific example of really what you're already working on there, and how your NFT marketplace will look like, and how easy it will be to, I guess let's call it, onboard the content.
Yeah. So, again, our broader vision is we're a world at Superworld,
Right.
and, it can really be anything under the sun. A lot of what's happening in the NFT world right now, outside of NBA Top Shots, is a digital art's a big component of that, as well as music and other types of entertainment content.
Yeah.
And at Superworld, because we're a world, because there's a lot of different angles to this, we're creating an NFT salon which is vertically integrated with our world. And
Right.
so again, all of those users, whether they're, again, back to the buying a stadium, that I would characterize that, super citizen as someone who's a sports fan, right? If they're buying stadiums. And so they would want to do, sports content as an NFT, or they would be interested in that. And then there's other, super citizens of Superworld that are into the music scene or the digital art scene. And, one of our most famous artists in residence is Krista Kim, who sold her Mars house and, was on CNBC and literally all over the world news in the last couple of weeks as the most expensive digital house. So she comes from the architecture world, right?
Okay.
And so, we're connected with lots of, millions of architects now
Right.
who have, digital items that they want to put in Superworld, like the Mars house.
Got
And
it.
so, it could be cars, it could be F1, it could be we're having lots of conversations across all of those segments. And I think ultimately the product that we're launching in the NFT salon is going to be catered to each of those markets. And so the sports, side of it will be more for sports fans. The art side of it will be more for art, and all of these things. So it'll be the long tail of NFT content. But most importantly, you'll be able to put those NFTs in the real world.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that is where I think that's the differentiation, which we talked about before, right? To others, there are other platforms who you will be able to trade and buy and sell and maybe upload those things. But the trick here is you are able to drop it into Superworld there'd be a VR element to it, right? That's sort of a part of the differentiator, correct?
That's right. And we're very open to working with all those other marketplaces, and anything you buy or sell or create in our marketplace, you can sell anywhere else, right? Mm-hmm. But the benefit of utilizing our marketplace is that you can, again, very easily kind of, place that content in Superworld. Now, you could do that with other NFTs, regardless of where you create them or buy them from. So we are creating a very open world, to be clear, that works, across all of those marketplaces. But, again, there are advantages to build on our vertically integrated NFT salon when you're creating new assets.
Right. Because there's other places like OpenSea and several others I've read about. Yep. Again, how does that all work? How easy is it to really connect this? How freely can you move your NFT from one place to the other? Is that already possible, or crypto isn't quite there yet?
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. And if you create anything in Superworld, for example, you can, buy it on OpenSea. So OpenSea has a pretty great, platform in terms of allowing anyone to sell their NFTs on OpenSea, and vice versa. We'll do the same at Superworld. So we're very open. There's other platforms that are a little bit more closed. So, Super Rare is one of them. Nifty Gateway is another one which you can't just like sign up. There's a process and things to sell NFTs. And so they have, some of them are geared for artists. There's one called Foundation. They all have like kind of different niches, but I would say the vision and kind of our platform at Superworld is a very open one. So we want to make sure that anyone who wants to create digital assets, and we have an onboarding process So we have, inner circle at superworldapp.com, where anyone who wants to create an NFT, I urge you to email us there, innercircle@superworldapp.com, and we'll walk you through the whole process of creating a digital asset. How do you market yourself properly? How does the whole thing work? How do you program it? All of that stuff, so you can get into that world. Whether you're an artist, you're a sports fan, whether you're a music lover, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I love this. And again, this is sort of why we're on this call too. I really want to expose what you're doing there to the world, and get people to start thinking about it, because I'm getting calls from sports IP owners. We shall remain nameless here, but they're asking about it. Saying, Marcus, what do you think? How do we get into an NFT? How can we create it? I'm aware of conversation of again, the larger crypto exchanges and others are having with big IP owners, whether it's the Premier League or others around the world, to say, look, let us create NFTs for you. Let's do what the NBA did, obviously, right? Which is maybe one of the more high profile examples already out there, so that every IP owner in the world of sports or music, etc., is looking at it. There's no doubt, and therefore is a lot of it. And some people are already talking about a bubble, which is maybe is a bit early, because I think half the world hasn't even figured out yet what it means, or never mind trying to even have to ever be able to buy one of these things. So it can be quite a bubble. If as I say, probably 90% of the world doesn't even know how it works, but. Now, again, and this is sort of a question, when you look at this right now, as exciting and as crazy tech it sounds like here, is it really still very much the crypto community who is currently playing in this and making lots of money with it, or has the I don't know, the real world is the wrong word, but has the average user the average fan already figured this out?
It is something that I think at this stage still has a tremendous room for growth in general. I think NBA Top Shot and the company behind that has really helped to make this more mainstream. They're using a technology called Flow, which is, slightly a proprietary technology that they've created. I mean, they've opened it up to other developers, and you can get on it and develop on it. Ethereum is the biggest blockchain ecosystem for decentralized applications. And the ERC 721 standard, which is, again, a very technical sounding name, but that's kind of what an NFT is on Ethereum. Right. And so, again, it depends on kind of, how you want to define what you're buying, how decentralized, ultimately the reason these things are important is because you own them. They're decentralized. They're not owned by a centralized party. You own them forever. And so, because of the technical aspect of this, because of, there is a issue of getting a wallet and, MetaMask, and there's a lot of different kind of things you have to learn. I think that there is still a lot of room to go before this goes super mainstream. There is a lot of first mover action into this. And there is an excitement about it because the technology is pretty robust, and people are now realizing the potential of that technology to be used not only online but offline.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's why we're in it here. And one other part, which I think is really important to bring up for the understanding, is that different than when you sell an art piece or even your Michael Jordan trading card or an autographed T-shirt or a jersey of whoever, Cristiano Ronaldo. Once you sell that, that's it, right? Whether you were the artist who created it or, of course, you were the owner of that piece. Now, in the NFT world, is that as the artist, the person who's whatever created the artwork or created that piece, you have opportunities to earn some of that money in perpetuity as that product trades. Correct? That's a big piece of the puzzle, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. The asset can be programmed in whatever way you want it to be programmed, and one of the ways that most people kind of use these assets is they program to pay yourself every time it resells. And so you always get a share of any of that future revenue. And so an artist, when they create something new, has an incentive for that thing to keep trading, whatever it is, and or a creator in general, and so there's a lot of different aspects of kind of how that happens, and how you're more, because you're interested in that item holding value. There's also other considerations that you might make when you create it, right? And the buzz around it, and the interest in the artist or the creator or the sports, hero or whatever, sports player, in what they're doing in their life, right? And so certain items, you see this in jerseys, right? When someone gets in the news, the jersey gets to be really popular, and this is all digital, so a lot of the similar dynamics happening there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, we could keep going here, and I want to maybe go a little one more step in here before we wrap it up. Now, you mentioned your what you call your NFT salon is not far off. What are we talking about here? You are ready to onboard IP in the next couple of weeks, or when you guys are ready to jump on this here? Or get involved in it.
Yeah. So it's coming very soon. Without naming a date, early in April. Something like that. Early April, and so the idea right now is what we're doing is onboarding NFT creators. So anyone who wants to create, if you're new to this, if you don't know what we're talking about and you want to get in on this, just email us, innercircle@superworldapp.com, and we'll get you in the inner circle. And the inner circle is all about teaching you how this works. What is an NFT? How do you create an NFT? How do you market yourself properly? And we'll help market you as well, right, to our community. So, we really want to be supportive of NFT creators across the sports world, the art world, you name it. So, inner circle at superworldapp.com. And if you want to be a collector and you're like, what, I might not want to make one of these, but I'd love to start collecting NFTs. We have something called Collector's Corner. So Collector's Corner at superworldapp.com. Just email again. Just say, hey, I want to be a collector. And again, we'll train you about, what are NFTs? How do you think about this? What are some, interesting NFTs that are being made? We'll introduce you to, NFT creators. And, so we're kind of looking at both sides of that market and trying to educate the users there, because there's a lot of people that are very interested in this space but don't know where to start.
Yep, definitely, and hopefully they learned a little bit, in our conversation here over the last hour, not just what an amazing career you have, but what amazing stuff you're doing here right now. Fantastic. We will make sure all those these email addresses and websites we're putting out there on the podcast. And by the time the podcast will be live, you'll be very close to either having launched or being fully live there. So I'm looking forward to bringing my world of sports and gaming and some of the other parts to you guys here and keep working there. I think it's a fascinating space. As we discussed before, having that experience when you are a sports fan, that you're walking into a sports environment, similar if you are you like arts, you want to walk into something which feels like a museum or a digital museum, right? So I think that's hopefully is what we're going to be seeing here, that it really creates elements where people are in these worlds which they love, and then experience that digital part of it, creating NFTs, or of course buying and selling and trading NFTs, which is just an amazing world, and I'm sure we're going to be learning lots more about it, and hopefully have some more conversations once you're live and once we onboard the first big IP here.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited to work with you and to really create these amazing experiences for sports fans around the world. And it's I think sports is such an amazing category, and there's so many different aspects of it, and it's so evolving. And with technology and NFTs, I think there's it's only the beginning. So I'm super excited about all that's possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyone who knows me and knows my contacts, you can get in touch with me as well. I will connect you with Hrish here, and we'll crack it together, bring the world of sports to Superworld and beyond. That sounds pretty cool. I had the sign off here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Hrish, thank you for your time here. Have a great time in San Francisco. Good evening there. And look forward to chatting some more very soon here, buddy.
Thank you so much, Marcus. A pleasure. And, again, to all your fans, I really appreciate the opportunity to tell our story. Thank you again.
I love that. Amazing stuff there. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
See ya. The Sports Entrepreneurs by Marcus Luer podcasts are a collection of interviews and stories. All content in this podcast is the copyright of Marcus Luer. Reproduction and distribution of the presentation without written